thank you everyone for joining us for the May 21st, 2026 Housing Blue Ribbon Committee meeting. We will just go around and take attendance for the public who watches us. Assistant Mayor Kelly, and then we have 3 staff members with us.
My name is Isaac Gilbo.
Peter Stith.
Stephanie Casella.
Eric Anderson.
Andrew Simonis.
Dagan Migurdich. Eric Weinrib.
Oliver Shag.
Iron Matto.
Beth Moreau.
Mary Lone.
Thank you so much. Okay, and then I would look to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Did everyone get a chance to look over those draft meeting minutes that had all the notes for some of the things we were gonna talk about today? Okay, I would look for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain, was not present.
Perfect. Thank you. One abstain, Mr. Simonis. And then we, our next staff and really what we're gonna be focusing on tonight is doing our housing action plan, HAP, action items, review and prioritize the housing action plan. So we have, we narrowed it down to 26? 26 out of the submitted proposal for the housing action plan. Part of everyone's homework was to go on and personally pick, I think we said top 3 items. We'll pull it up on the screen so that we can get those prioritized in a more condensed action plan that we can submit. Yes, Eric?
Toward the end of the last meeting, it was discussed because when we're into the, trying to, prioritize the items that have been identified. Maybe I didn't understand it as well enough from Peter, is what was the criteria for picking the 20 items out of the 147? And it was just a question we didn't have time to address, but since we're creating this toolbox of some sort with concepts, ideas, is what's the goal of this session? Housing, is it housing stock across all dimensions of housing stock? Is it more focused like in the last iteration with affordable workforce housing? I'm just not sure where our goals.
Yeah.
We
haven't set a goal for this term.
We haven't established them, so.
No,
if
correct.
If we haven't established them, I'm not sure how we move through this toolbox because each one of those items has a different implication into the housing stock or the housing issues that we're trying to address. So I know that we did that iteration in the first session of this committee, and we did focus on affordable housing, and we actually got very specific and it took a little time to get through it, but we said 500 units, 500 affordable workforce units, and so that set the goal. We haven't, in my opinion, we haven't really established that goal of this committee for this session. So I just want to get it out before we go into the iteration of building a toolbox.
I think that's great. I think that this committee, we can decide if we want a fine line goal like we had last time. I think last time we had a couple different scenarios in front of us that we're looking for our feedback and opinion. And I would say, this was sent down to us as an initiative from the council to say, it is a goal of the council to look at a housing development or housing action plan. We want to send it to the committee to finite these 100 and something down to actionable items. I think it can be as broad or as narrow as we decide, if we decide that we want to do something like that. I think that I don't necessarily know I think when we look back at our last session, like I said, I think we have tangible goals and projects that we were looking to assess that were directly correlated with below market rate housing, which is why I think that became the heart of that session. If there's any matters on the top of anyone's head that they feel like needs to be the streamlined focus of this session, we can put that out for conversation. Or if people think they want to cast a broader net this time to then work down, so reversing kind of the process, we could do that too. I'll go Simonis and Beth.
I was sheepishly putting my hand up because I was not present last time, so I apologize for that. But do we have a quantity or quantifiable metric to the short-term, long-term goal aspects of these?
I don't think we've ever.
Haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. I'll hold the rest of my comments.
I sort of see, because our goal by July was to have a housing action plan, is that our entire goal of this term is to not only create the plan, but to start to implement the plan. And, you know,
The actual
right,
steps.
to put action items, to put, you know, who's responsible for them, that kind of thing. Like just getting it together and then actually starting to like push implementation, I feel like is kind of my overarching goal for the entire sort of year. And while I have the floor, at our last meeting, for those that weren't here, we talked about something that Eric Weinberg brought up, whether or not we could offer tax relief or at least freezing tax assessed values for apartment buildings that are of current stock in order to help them lower in exchange for. We do not have state legislation to allow us to do that. I've pushed legal, I've pushed assessing, every department. So one of the things though, we could try to get creative, because I then started to talk to some other people, could we find a way under housing opportunity zones to make that a possibility? So I think one of my number ones to get on this is to enact 79E and to try to find a way to create housing opportunity zones that maybe that would be a possibility.
Go ahead. Do we need state approval to do that?
Well, so if we use 79E and we find a way creatively under 79E, then we can do it. Otherwise, we need enabling legislation to allow us to just give tax relief.
But the city of Portsmouth can implement 7090.
Yes,
As-
it's by a direction of the council. Yep.
And does Portsmouth have a defined zone or radius today for
No.
that?
No, we've looked into it. We asked staff to look into it. It was too broad, so I am mentally in the process of putting together something to bring to council to help staff focus where we're gonna go with it. And it's just a matter of my time hasn't been free enough to get that done yet.
Where we are going to go with it, like literally the geography of where?
At least ideas, not maybe exact zones, but looking at, okay, let's look at gateway neighborhoods, or let's look at, you know, whatever types of neighborhoods that might have the opportunity depending on the zone. So coastal resilience, obviously we're probably not gonna do that in the middle of the city, but where there are issues or wetlands or whatnot, then coastal resilience might be one of the aspects that we actually want to enact. So there's so many different pieces of it, and I think different pieces belong in different areas of the city.
That would be phenomenal. I think that would be a really great actionable.
I agree, so.
And then Eric.
We got diverted in a good way
Yes.
there. I guess I'll ask a question that sprung from this conversation first. Why does RSA 674 not allow us to do things like tax relief? I mean, that seemed to be a pretty broad brush that they painted with, and yet
This is what they're telling me, is that there's nothing specific for the relief that we were looking for, right? You can do it for solar panels, you can do it for disabled, elderly, veterans, like there's so many areas that you can do tax relief for, but not every area is enabled by it, so.
And is our reluctance to do so our fear of litigation, or is it that we do not?
We don't have the legal standing to do so. So the problem with the way the laws in the state of New Hampshire work, if the federal or state government has not given us legislation that allows us to do something, we're basically just not allowed to do it.
Yeah.
Like we can't force affordable housing or workforce housing on developers because we don't have that kind of laws that allow us to do
Even though we have RSA 674, which says we should be
Yep.
providing reasonable and realistic opportunity for affordable housing.
You got it.
Surprisingly, some contradictions there.
a lot.
To go back to the initial conversation of goal setting, I would hate to see us ruin the momentum we have from last session. I also think, if my recollection serves me, it was 5 sessions to produce
Yes.
a very generic goal. It was a waste of time. And I think learning lessons from the previous session, I would like us to waste as little time as humanly possible here in these sessions. And I think this is an actionable plan that we can put together. Literally, it is the name of it. And it would be in our best interest to take advantage of, to streamline ourselves with the conduct of the city council, with their agenda, and try to make things happen together rather than throw wrenches in the wheels by trying to focus on the granular parts that are probably not going to serve us in the long run.
Eric and then Andrew.
Yeah, I'll just go back, because I stated at the first meeting is that my interest in this discussion is not for market rate housing. That seems to be, it'll seek its own level. And we've all heard stories about market rate housing as it exists right now. And I think there's been publication about how much is in the pipeline or how much has been initiated just in the last year. We can look at different numbers through the last 5 years and say, okay, it's not to debate the numbers, but the proportion of housing development in the city has been greatly, is more in a market rate situation.
Mimicking the national, yeah, it's what we're saying.
That's just the way it is. And so I think we've all discussed, or we've all had some interest in putting some component of affordability back in this city. And so at least my focus in this toolbox is, I would say, not to give market rate housing further enhancement, but to bring focus into affordability. And that's just my opinion. I don't know what everybody else thinks about it, but
Yeah.
it's,
I think
we have classifications, we have market rate, we have below market rate, we have workforce, we have affordable. Affordable really hasn't, there's really no definition of affordable except what you can afford, but so that's all over the page.
not more than 30%.
Well, yeah, I mean,
30%, yeah.
There is a definition.
But I would say my response to that, Mr. Anderson, would be that the easiest, I would agree with Dagan that I think we need to focus on this and then post this. If the committee decides, okay, for the rest of the session, we want to set X, Y, and Z goal, I think we can. But if you're looking to prioritize what your goals are, then within what we're doing, I think that can fall within how you rank the priorities within the housing action.
Yeah, that's a great component of this exercise, is that you'll be able to give us what your goals are based off of
That's fine, that's fine.
170
At
of
least
them.
I wanted to get out where I'm
Yes.
gonna be coming from this position.
And I think it's great, and I think it's a good reminder that our duty right now, our call of action from the council is to get as finite of this actionable plan in conjunction with staff back to the council by July. So that really gives us a short amount of time, and then it gives us a whole year and a half to tackle any other topics that the committee feels is pressing and/or analyze more of how we can then take some of the steps within the action plan and forward on to those. Yes.
Let's say we assemble a short list of some of these priorities and we send it back to the council. I think that obviously, because the council has not only established this committee, but also has requested this, that they are going to generally be receptive of it. But what is the event that they say, don't love those?
And then I think that we as a committee present and fight for the ideas. I mean, just like with any committee that sends something to the council or any
Yeah.
board that sent, the council can reject it. So that's always, on the weighing block. I think that the council respects the time of the volunteers and committee members that are hyper focused on this, and I think that's why we send things off to committee, so that they can be kind of looked at in a very intense manner. I can't say that if for some reason 4 or 5 of the councilors suddenly have a change of heart and say like, no, housing is not a priority. I don't foresee that, but
It's our number one goal for the city council. When we set our goals at the beginning of this term, housing and affordable housing was our number one goal. So
Yeah.
diversity of housing, I think is how we used it.
To follow that statement up, not to dominate the conversation, but to dovetail off of what Mr. Anderson said, it does not seem that workforce housing is mentioned in these descriptors. Is that intentional or not intentional?
in the description of the 26,
Yes.
I mean, I would say
It's a struggle to find.
non-intentional myself.
So 79 calls out Housing Trust Fund.
Yeah.
There's one there.
Which is already established.
Right, but how do we use it and how do we fund it? those are the other two things that we need to continue to work on. Otherwise, there won't be enough money in there, and what are we gonna do with the money now that it's there?
And number 10 is affordable units in lieu type thing. So I think there's like pieces in there. Yeah.
Well, and this is a housing action plan. The action is to create affordable housing. So to address, to say
I see.
workforce in all of these would be redundant because many of these are solutions to the problem, or at least proposed solutions to the problem.
However, they are not by definition affordable or workforce housing, but they are implemented in hopes to add supply, and then by nature.
Not all of them, some of
Not-
them are. And this is the staff recommended list.
Yeah.
So there's also, we were pulling from the Progress Portsmouth website, which has like
Yeah.
100 and I think 46 or
So
something.
so I wanna make a
Some
note,
of them do explicitly mention it.
if there was something on that 140 plus item list that you felt impassioned about that didn't make it to this final list, now would be the time to bring it up. So we can reanalyze it. We can analyze it as a group, send it back to staff, say, hey, this is the lens we're looking through. So I would say now would be the time that if there was something on that list that you felt was a pinpoint for you that didn't make it to this, now would be the time to bring that up. 'Cause partly A, so we're not wasting a bunch of time, and rehashing a list in 2 weeks.
I have ones that didn't make the list, but they can wait till later.
Oh, are you sure?
I am, yeah, I mean, I guess, well, actually, no, let me put this to the group. You know, being someone who is not in the development space, not in the real estate space, not in the legal space, going through some of this, it's like, oh, I know that acronym and those words, but the implementation of it is not my skill set. But what I wanted us to consider as a thought exercise, especially for those of you who do work in these spaces and are familiar with the nuts and bolts of this, is to try to identify which of these, which are separate numbers and line items both on this sheet and on the Progress Portsmouth page, that could be essentially bundled together by taking specific actions. So maybe, you know, for instance, like, I think you could take the entire, like, you know, numbers 77, 78, and 79 on the Progress Portsmouth page are all about that housing trust fund. Those can be bundled together as one action item. There are others like the,
And I think not to interrupt you,
No, go
but I
ahead.
think it's really good, I don't know if we can, okay, you have it. That some of those things are listed as completed
Yes.
on their site. So some of those things, you know, when going through this list, feel like, okay, we have at least, you know, hit the ground with the shovel on that item. So we can move on to the next phase of what would be, you know, again, you know, if you look at 77, 78, 79, the next step for that would be to deploy some more
Exactly.
funding, to figure out how we actually are gonna use this funding that we've got. Yes.
Yeah, no, Diggin, you're exactly right. And the theme to me, this really jumped out as zoning in particular. I think that the umbrella of zoning, and there's a lot of these that fall underneath. So I think my big one is a comprehensive audit of the zoning.
And that's gonna be forthcoming after the master plan's
Plan,
adopted.
yes.
We already, kind of teeing that up.
and we would be wise to recognize the things like Joanna said, like, we don't need to recommend creation of a housing trust fund that's been created. How do we piggyback off of the successes that we've had to have the greatest impact? Maybe there are line items in here that are not as impactful as, number 5, the missing middle allowance could be amazing for the community. And that might have the most impact if achieved, but it might be more difficult to achieve than some of the other low-hanging fruit that is carrying on the momentum that we have from the last council, from all the work that's been done for decades now to try to solve this crisis.
And sometimes I think going off that is of some of the conversations that we're having, that I think it's really great when we have staff and the planning board members here that say like, well, that has already been brought up. It was denied because of, or we didn't pursue it because of X, Y, Z, and then we could potentially look at it through a different lens. Because I know, like, bringing up number 5, one of the things that we see all the time when we are trying to upzone some parcels is that we do now have residents saying, I don't want you to upzone my single family resident unit. So this group may say that is the easiest way to allow, you know, a duplex at a single or a quad where a duplex is allowed. It may seem like an easy, low fruit for us, but then you put it out into the community to some areas and they're like, absolutely do not do that in my neighborhood. So I think, you know, that's also, we have to have that blunt conversation, which we don't, you know, we really had to have to when we were talking about affordable or workforce housing in some areas, that like some of our neighbors may say, absolutely not, you're not doing that in my neighborhood. And then we have to figure out what neighborhoods are saying, we're cool with that. So I just think that some of these ideas, I don't know how to say it in it, are not novel, new ideas. We just have to find different ways in different areas to approach them. And yes.
You know, in an overview, you know, whether it's 30,000 feet or 10,000, or the closer you get to it, I mean, I kind of perceive this as, there's an experiment going on. And it's, you know, it's, what do we want to do to fulfill the housing needs that are recognizable? And whether that's through density, whether that's through height, whether that's, until we finally reach the saturation point, that we start to see some result in the market rate, you know, that exists right now. And we don't know when that point is. We don't know how much housing is needed across all dimensions.
I would say it potentially isn't in our lifetime.
What's that?
I think that, like, as a nation, we are so far behind, like, since the 80s, since the stop of the build of 08, like, we are so far behind in the amount of units that are needed nationally, locally, and statewide, that we may never be able to build ourselves out of it. But I guess I look at this group and look at our community and say, well, if I know that in 20 years, I will meet someone that my kid goes to school with and they say like, oh, I live in this neighborhood or this development, I can be like, you know what, that's one family that like lives, that has a home that I was part of.
And my only point there is that, and you're right, but we're addressing this within the confines of the city of Portsmouth. And then if we keep going through this not experiment, but iteration to say, okay, let's bring saturation, let's bring housing perspective, or housing, let's meet the housing goals that we think we need within the boundaries of the city. And we got what have we done to the city? What have we done in density? What have we done in height? What have we done? Because they're
Services?
it's almost irreversible at that point. We say, we got to it. What do we have in the end? We have a city that doesn't resemble itself. Or not resemble itself, but it's changed so much in its character, its texture. And that, I don't say I'm concerned with that.
Some would argue it has.
What's that?
Some would argue it has.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm convinced we could fix the housing issue in the city in 5 years. We cut police, we cut fire, we cut public works, we cut all our services. No one will want to live here.
It is, I mean,
You are correct.
Come on, I mean, seriously, we stopped paving the road, we stopped.
we stopped picking up people's trash and we charge them for bags.
Yes, we can fix it so easily.
That's not fixing it. That's burning it all down.
That's lighting a match.
But I'm serious, is that our problem is land costs and desirability of being.
And those are things that we as a committee and
Yeah.
we're never.
I don't want to do that, by the way.
I thought that was your top.
Turn it down.
Double A.
Mission
I'm fund the
accomplished.
school. Just kidding, fund the point. But I do agree that there is a part of the topic that like there are so many uncontrollables that what I think we are trying to do as a committee are find the tiny little levers that we do have control. We are never going to have control over the cost of land acquisition. We're never going to have control over the cost of construction. We are barely going to have control of the cost of infrastructure build out, but we have tiny little levers that we are trying to move. I think that the article about the Ruth Griffin farm is a good example. We cannot control that, but you have to respect at some point that is that family's priority and desire, and that's their land. We can't control that.
I completely agree. I think that, to your point, Joe, I think that's a perfect example because there's a line somewhere in terms of what can be built on that piece of property, right? And assumably under the, it's legal for someone to come in and do what they're going to do, right? And so there is a reasonable line that we draw with zoning in terms of what's permissible, right? And so because we are in control of that line, right, we can make it more permissible or less permissible for different things. And so I don't think it's not like a yes or no or sort of binary choice. It's a spectrum in terms of what you allow, a spectrum in terms of, how permissible you want things to be. And further on that same point, to your point, Eric, around things not being recognizable, you go back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but that's just it. That's every place. Every place is going to change and evolve. And I don't think this is my opinion certainly, is that I don't think it's overly tenable to try and hold and not allow for the city to be dynamic to the needs of the people that are living in it, right? So the people who are living in it and want to be here, right? I think that a lot of times the job of the city is to essentially bend and change to those needs. I think that's where I come at this perspective too, is we want to serve those folks who are wanting to be here, and so.
Are we serving the residents here, or are we serving individuals that wanna come here?
That's
For
a great
housing.
question.
Yeah, I think it's a balance, certainly.
And I think
Wait, can you repeat this, like individuals who wanna come here to live or individuals who wanna come here to visit?
Live, I guess, because this is a housing issue.
But I guess you can argue that in so many spaces. Like, is my future child, do they deserve a house here someday? They're not a resident now, but they're going to be a resident. I think we have to be very careful when we toe the line of like future resident, outside person, we have to.
Every time I go to planning board,
Yeah.
it's what I hear. I came here, whether 2 years ago, 10 years ago, 40 years ago, they don't want it to change from the day they came here.
Yeah.
I came here for a way.
I came here in 1972. I wanted to be like, I wasn't born. I came here in 2010 and I loved it then and I love it now. And so I do think we have to be careful about how we.
Because I feel the same way. I get tensed up that it's different than it was. And I'm part of the problem, not necessarily part of
What are we trying to preserve it from, right? I mean, like, I grew up here, Ollie grew up here, Andrew was right over in Greenland, and, my folks went to high school here in the 80s, and there was 2,500 kids at the high school, the air base was open, I guess changed a lot, so I guess, like, what are we specifically trying to preserve? I love Portsmouth, right, and I love the character of town, but, I think, to your point, we have these levers that we can pull, and whether it be tax incentives or zoning reform, whatever, there's things that we can do. Sure, we want to have the character of town be what it is. We love Portsmouth for a number of reasons, but yeah, people that are here, we want them to be able to buy a house and live here and have the life that we did when we grew up in town.
And you also have to know that, again, I think the biggest, at least as a part of the governing body that I'm constantly talking to people about, is I can't control the elements of the private market. I had this conversation with someone today when we were talking about the Ruth Griffin. I said,
Right.
well, are you mad that there's 2 homes, or are you mad at the price of the homes?
Right.
Would you be mad if there were 2 like homes that were $700,000? Or are you mad that there's 2 homes being built on a lot that we love to watch the geese run? Or are you mad at the price of them? Like, because I can't control that price in the market.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of that conversation in the community of, are you mad that there's 3 homes going in, or are you mad at the price of the home? Because a house in Rochester is selling for $800,000 now. So it's,
Right.
you know what I mean? Yes.
I'm gonna touch the third rail here because it's just so dumb how people react to some headlines. Like, well, we're gonna continue on the Ruth Griffin track, except it's now the PHA Ruth Griffin project. And the neighbors, also living in a PHA project, sued PHA.
Yeah.
So shut up. Like, there's literally 0 standing for you. And I can get kicked off this board, I'm sure of it.
Okay.
But I do
It's
not.
a blue ribbon.
I do not think. I'm gonna get a call from Dago. I do not think, to your point and to yours, that our action items should be quantitative. They should be qualitative. And yes, we are already looking at a zoning audit. We are looking at how to use the Housing Trust Fund money. We are looking at all of these things. So it would be my preference and my opinion, Byron said it much more eloquently than I will, but to not worry about people's preferences and preserving or, preventing this evolution of Portsmouth, but to do so and enable it to be done with integrity and purpose. So, a handful of years ago, I actually had a really ironic conversation with Ollie's mother about smart growth. And, it was like this really salient conversation about smart growth and doing everything with purpose, and so that there's yield to that. And it had nothing to do with, well, we need to create more affordable housing units because we have a lack of them. When in reality, it might not be a Portsmouth thing that we are lacking affordable housing units or WorkFresh housing units. It may not be a Portsmouth thing that we are lacking housing at all. My favorite stat that we've talked about ad nauseum in these meetings is the fact that we have less than 2% available land in the city of Portsmouth and our 15.5 square miles. So I don't think that we have to be looking at where are we going to create more of this, but utilizing the land that we do have, such as the oversized plots or the non-conforming plots that probably have more opportunity intrinsically to them. And so it would be my preference to look at that in terms of enabling and doing so with purpose.
I agree with you.
Seems like a good segue to talk about our goals here.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, welcome to the committee. We like to get a good 20-minute rant in.
I mean, sorry.
I think
read
it's part of
Facebook's
Wait till
once
we
a
get some
day,
public
and I think
comment.
that's
Hey,
all I
all
can
right, that's the
tolerate.
really exciting stuff.
Andrew, I don't read it at all, then you don't have to tolerate it.
You know, I developed solar farms in the Midwest. Like, the public comment I get is, you'd be shocked.
So I want to put it out one more time before we actually start going over what people's top 3 goals were. Was there anything on the list from Progress Portsmouth that you felt should have been on the staff recommendation list that was not there? Yes.
I struggled with the list that was there to really give it some priority
Yep.
for this meeting, and I found 12 items on,
Okay.
that have some focus into my interest in this, in
Okay.
this,
Can we go
discussion.
Yeah.
I can pass them on. I don't think, well,
If you just want
I
to tell
can
us.
pass them over, but I had
Yeah.
12 items that.
Yeah, do you want to?
Do you have extras?
What's that?
Do you have extra copies?
Uh,
So that we can, yeah.
Yeah, at least just one, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, that was them right there, the first page.
Perfect, thank you.
And I did pick some but they weren't my favorite out of the 28. They were the ones that were not included had more interest in.
Okay, so if your top 3 is I would say in the not included and you feel very passionate about it, let's hear which ones those are.
The ones that out of the 28.
What I'm asking for is if there are any outside of the 28 that you feel rank higher than the 28.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can read them.
Okay.
Z15, the missing middle housing allowances, but I said needs more definition to present opportunity to affordability.
Okay.
Z12, affordable housing overlay zone, presents prospect for less than market rate housing opportunity, but needs more definition and development. Z13, expand manufactured home and modular house zoning, creates prospect for less than market rate opportunity. Z17, allow subdivision of existing large houses. It doesn't, it could promote more affordable housing, but it needs more definition because that can still translate into market rate, issues. Z18, facilitate room rental and home sharing. Z19, seasonal worker housing provision. 8, fee structure review. With particular focus on affordable or workforce housing. And I would recommend, my preference would be reduction versus elimination.
And that was P8.
That was P8. I-1, ADU incentive programs, scale to afford, and my comment is scale to affordability and not market rate housing. IZ, affordable housing fee waivers for 25% or more affordable units. I say that percentage should be increased,
More than 25%.
more than 25% for any fee waivers. And I3, expedited review of workforce housing. If there's a project that comes to the surface that needs to go through through the planning process, that it would receive some type of expedited service. So there they are. I found more interest in the ones that weren't in the 28
Okay.
versus the 28 that we did. The 28, my measurement and scale is across the whole housing spectrum that market rate down to workforce it's still left more prospect for market rate development, which I've expressed my opinion on that.
Andrew?
I really liked the special populations component that was on the Portsmouth Housing Action Plan website. To put it briefly, senior housing continuum strategy, transitional and supportive housing, assisted living or memory care expansion, disability housing strategy, veteran housing outreach and assistance, student and young professional housing. I think in my day-to-day life, I have a lot of conversations that surround, yes, we want to sell our home. Yes, we would love to downsize. Yes, we would love to also stay in Portsmouth to do all of those things. And there are very few, if any, viable opportunities for folks to do so. One of the elements that often comes up is we can help you stay in the community, but you have to use this elevator to go to the fourth story of your apartment building and do all of these extra things that you previously were not doing. And at times, older populations or vulnerable populations may not want to do that. So I think to put it more toward a qualitative lifestyle or implementation thing, that would be within a zoning audit, sure, but that would be a priority for me.
Andrew, can you just tell me what that number was?
Yes.
SP1
Thank you.
through SP6.
Might chime in on
Yes, please.
the single story type living for land area.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just, that's a premium for towns and communities where there's a lot of land, so you can have all sorts
Sure.
of single story living. I mean, I don't wanna move anywhere, but every time I walk around my wife, she sees a house that's a single story, she's like, that comes on the market, we need to buy that.
Yeah.
Build my house in Maple Haven to retirees because they wanted single floor living.
Yeah, and I'm not even talking about Raymond is a classic example because Raymond is so deadly scared of increasing their school population that they only approve 55 plus. And so, I don't think that that's what we need to suggest by any stretch, but maybe just some element of incorporating or acknowledging these older folks who have been here for a long time in several generations. South End is a pretty classic example, but how do you help those people relocate and how do you help them maintain sort of their familiarity with where they are and their surroundings? So I don't know how that's achieved. It's a several $1 million question,
Yeah.
but that's a huge priority.
I think a huge part of this group too runs the question always, which is the one I hate to ask, which is like, what is the responsibility? Where does the responsibility become obtainable for the government
Sure.
to actually do something?
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Like socially, I feel like I need to do, but like there comes the question for me at least when we're analyzing this list, like, well, what is the government's role in that? If it doesn't become moving into like affordable subsidized senior housing, like where does,
Yeah, I guess to Eric's point, like it
that's not
doesn't.
me asking you a question, that's like me asking the world, like
I guess-
how do we solve that problem?
I can provide an example. in Dover, when they did the little cottages, John and Maggie Randolph, right? It's this incredibly storied project that they did, and just yesterday or today, they're now beginning to sell those units to their employees, which is phenomenal, right? But even that was like a zoning mechanism and a zoning tool. So it's not saying, hey, we're gonna go help these specific employees of this specific company, but more so we're going to try to help this population, and how do we think big picture wise to implement that zoning change to then get that result?
Yeah.
So socially, yes, I agree, and maybe the government influence on that is the zoning component.
And maybe, I guess part of that makes me think about how you just said less than 2%. Maybe that isn't a lever that Portsmouth has the ability to work on, but that is a lever that, you know, if we have ideas and it comes out of this group, then we could reach out to Raymond or X, Y, and Z or some of the Tri-City communities that we deal with and talk to and say, hey, we don't have space for this. We think this is a really great idea. Here's some of our information.
I brought that up in the
Eric,
last one. I'm sorry.
We've reached out to other communities saying, hey, we would love to team with our housing and land, but there's a difference of saying, hey, we want to build this on your property versus saying, hey, here are some maybe uses that you haven't thought of for your zoning. I think there's a difference of saying to somebody, I mean, we didn't get responses from most of the communities, so that was the response.
I'm
Like,
not surprised.
yeah, not at all. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, we have, and this is where the struggle comes of the balance that I think we always fight about, is that like, we can't tell Newington that they have to be left, they're becoming more restrictive because we, as a community, are saying, well, then we have to pick up some of the slack and trying to figure out, and I know that you and I maybe have different opinions of this, that like, I can't pick up the slack for Newington or Greenland, but I have to carry the weight of Portsmouth. So that's where we come into the conversation of how much can Portsmouth handle? How much can our schools handle? How much can our DPW handle? How much, and I always go back to when the base was open. I understand people say there was housing on the base, but now we have the opportunity zones and the G-nods and the gateway zones to build more density, the density that would match what was at Pease in the sheer volume of households in some of these gateway zones and in some of these G-nod zones. So I put the argument all the time as, we had 10,000 more people, 7,500 to 10,000 more people in our community. We have more efficiencies in our systems now. Yes, we have 5 less elementary schools, but we have more efficiencies in our DPW system and our waterway system. To know that this community has supported 10,000 more individuals. It has supported, 3,700 more households than it's currently supporting. So that's, just so everyone in this community knows, because I know I haven't met everyone, that's the mechanism and the lens that I continuously look through housing for. When people say like, well, we can't, well, we can. We just are shifting where we're putting people. And we will hit a limit at some point, and then we will have no control over what happens with the market. Then we become we don't know. I don't want to put it in the universe, but until we reach that break point. But that is why it's important to establish the pipeline of 500 or 200 or 400 permanently below market rate housing to go on top of the already 1,000 units that we have. So we have to establish those, but also understand that we can't control the market for what happens in 20 years.
I just want to remind everyone, we have 30
We
more
have
minutes.
30 minutes, so we're going through we're gonna start this side, because we're chatty on this side. And Eric will take those into account, and if your 3 want to come from your 12 list, I'm okay with that. Don't tell John I'm breaking the rules.
And I did have 4 items out of the 28.
Yeah,
that
but I think
selected.
it's okay if you are more passionate about 3 of your 12. Tabor's not here to enforce the rules. I think that's okay. Okay. So we're gonna, how do you want to?
Yeah, so I don't know how, we were saying pick your top 3. We have stickers, just so we can track it. If you
Yes,
wanna-
we like a visual.
Yes. And, so if you wanna, I can put the stickers on if
I
you
think
want.
we can,
Or if everyone wants, you wanna put their stickers on.
Let Peter do it.
Yeah, have one person doing the stickers, and that way not everyone's up wandering around.
I was like, I think it's quick, just grab a sticker and stick it
Are
on.
these weighted at all? Like by
Well, that was the
colors?
other question. Do you wanna weight them?
Do you
Like,
wanna
have
do your
your
1,
top
2,
one
3?
be
1, 2, 3.
I think you have 3 different colors based off of people's
Yeah.
weight. Yeah.
Makes sense.
I didn't weight mine.
I have,
I did not weigh
We
mine.
could always see how many
Yeah, I think it
individual
just
stickers
overall
each
weight
item
that we
gets,
all
and
pick
maybe
three.
that's how
I
we.
agree with Eric
And then
Yeah.
from there, we can look at the long-term, short-term.
and break it down that way.
After we narrow
No
it
one
down,
likes
we can
mine.
rate it, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Okay, let's do it.
I just wanna
Yes,
clarify,
Andrew.
we are doing a zoning audit very shortly here. I am not going to include things that I consider part of the zoning audit in my preferences.
It's ambiguous.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I guess I had the same question. Like, the ones that are highlighted green are either they've already happened, or the ones that are highlighted in blue they're happening. So we should probably not.
Right, and some are even done, like.
Yeah.
And I think if they end up on the ranking, then we know, like, okay, we need to wash that, add something else.
We can give shout outs, but then we'll choose the ones that are not
It's just like on the progress website, it says like completed, in progress,
Yeah, like,
kind of
very
started.
Yeah.
And there could be some zoning things that could be done, this summer. I think, rezoning or changing
Can we
the
start giving
density
our goals?
of districts.
Can I ask a question before we get started on this though? Just one clarification. You mentioned earlier, Peter, about the action plan relative to the zoning audit. And I just wanted to clarify.
The master plan.
Master, sorry,
plan.
what did I say? I meant
You
master
said
plan.
or action plan.
Yeah, the master plan, sorry, I meant the master plan. Between the master plan and the zoning audit, what is the interaction between, like, is there a legal or like official mechanism between the zoning audit and that master plan? Like, what weight does the master plan hold?
The master plan guides the development of the zoning ordinance. So the master plan is.
Can you be more specific in terms of like the mechanics of that as a?
Do we have an example of something that is shifting in zoning based on some of the
Well,
master
so if
plan?
it calls out, if like the master plan is looking at like gateway areas and they're kind of expanding them, so we could say, oh, in the master plan it says, hey, we should look at these areas and expand the zoning in those areas. Say if some of those aren't zoned gateway or something, it'd be a reason to rezone properties in those
If
areas.
something isn't in the master plan, does that mean it can't be addressed?
No.
It's just-
We do
it's
things
just
out of the
guidance.
master plan, but it's every 10 years, a
The master
community
plan is,
consensus.
they're getting a lot of feedback from a lot of people, and that's what we're trying to incorporate in our zoning changes, is the feedback we're getting from the community.
Which is why we shove it down people's throat to come to the meetings and place dots on things.
City councilor said, shove it down your throat.
Put your dot on the board. Shove the dot on the board. I get
Mary,
in
you wanna
trouble
give us
enough
your
for what I do
goals?
say.
I'll get them to stop talking eventually.
Yeah. Or is anybody ready? I think that,
I have
okay,
Are you ready?
toss your goals.
Everyone can come up at once and just, you don't have to go around and say.
You get to put the
I think it's
stickers on.
good to go around.
All right.
Yes, but I misunderstood the colors, so.
No,
Oh, no, they're not gonna
I'm
do
just
colors.
speaking of one color.
No, the blues, the yellows, and the reds.
Oh, I didn't care about that, I just went with what's
Yeah,
mine. My number one top is the 7090 why can't I say that?
Enacting?
Thank you, enacting and expansion.
I-4.
I can't read from this far away.
Yes,
Okay. My second top one would be the rezoning of outdated zoning like office research and general business. I've been talking about that for 5 years, along with 7090. So both of these I've been talking about since I started being a counselor.
Is that one?
Which number is that?
It's number one. I was just looking at the big numbers, so it was number one.
Yeah.
My other one is development in lieu fees for the GNOT expansion, which was 10 on my little list. I put 58, 10, and 1.
Okay, Byron?
Okay, so in the list that we have, there was 3 that were basically the same, which were 5, 21, and 33. So I don't want to put 3 dots, but those were basically read the same to me.
Can you read them?
Wait, can we clarify which numbers we're going on? Is it 1 through 26 on the left, or is
I was looking on the far
Probably
left.
on the far left.
Okay, far left, cool.
So which one do you have?
21, 33, and what?
They were all the same to me.
5.
Oh, zoning business.
It was basically, and I just want to pick the one that's gonna like
Oh, be the right one.
be the right one.
Okay, Byron, I think you're talking about, like, so 5 is
To
expand
expand
multifamily zoning.
multifamily zoning.
Yeah, 33 is single-family zone strategy reform.
Yeah.
This, just one second.
ties into the analysis that you did.
Yes.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
right. It's just one. To me, they're one thing,
So would 21 be the most like
What's the
the
21?
comprehensive zoning audit?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's
Yeah.
the
'Cause
umbrella.
I felt the same way where
Yeah.
I'm like,
Exactly.
these are,
Okay, so we'll go with 21 for me and not 33.
so he's
Sorry.
going by these numbers.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
Cause that's how I wrote
but I'm
it down.
just still,
And I'm gonna manipulate the voting. If anyone else wants to get on that one, go on 21 and not the students.
No
Okay.
way, go on 58.
This isn't bingo, people.
And then my other one was I'm with Beth on the office research one.
Getting rid of number 1,
number 1. And then I'm also with Beth on 79E
58.
58. Thank you.
I have them right here.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
It's up to you.
I'm on, I was going by the numbers in the column, so Z3.
Alright.
Okay.
That's fine, that's on the board.
That was common between both, yeah,
Those are on the board.
alright.
Those were so grayed out.
Z3, I4, which was the 79E,
suck my battleship.
and then Z21.
That's me.
Okay.
What's C20?
Oliver?
The zoning.
Yeah, so 21. It's definitely my big one. Again, there's a lot that fall underneath that.
Yeah.
You have these different numbers.
Expand multifamily zoning, number 5. I think that does fall underneath it. And Eric, I think that goes back to the point you brought up earlier about allowing subdivision of existing larger houses. That one also ties into, at least in my book.
And what number was that?
That was one that was not on the.
Yep, yeah.
It's currently being discussed in our master plan.
I don't know what it was, but
What number is that?
yeah, I don't think it's up there. I think it's.
I'm gonna write it.
Eric, can you know what number it was?
I can look it up.
C18.
Z18. No, Z18, no, Z17.
The subdivision
Allow
of
subdivision of
Oh,
allows,
that's right, I'm sorry.
Z17.
Z17, right.
Subdivision, yeah.
which has always been on my upzoning cases, the exception.
I mean, that's-
to allow.
So you want that one?
Yes.
Is that it for stickers for me?
That's all for you.
You could use the stickers.
Alright, yeah, can I buy a sticker?
I'll loan you a sticker. I'm charging interest though.
Yeah, that's
I don't know how to number it, whether it's 4 or 58, but
You can do the bigger number, cause that's what's on this board.
it's the RSA 79E.
Yep, so that's 58. 58, yeah, baby!
Let's have bingo.
So after that, I'm just struggling with which one within the zoning, because to me, it's zoning and
So
zoning.
then, would maybe just the zoning
So,
on it, the 21?
I look at, number 10, expand multifamily zoning or lot size and dimensional requirement updates. So, and that's not just like in your MRO and stuff, it's through the gateways, it's through everything, and it's also part of, as some staff may know, that when you start looking at the zoning and you're meeting with people, it's so convoluted and contradictory that
Yeah.
you don't even know where you're going. Right, guys?
It's hard to explain.
Was there another one?
So it was, I had 8 and 5, it was lot size dimension
Okay, alright.
and expand multifamily zoning.
Well, I'm glad I got my votes, and I gotta go meet with the customer again, so.
Okay,
But, sorry I was late, and sorry
No.
for being brief, but
I'm
glad I got
glad
to
we got your dots.
get my dots up there.
I'll see your mother soon.
Yes, she can't make it tonight, actually, she got
Yeah.
called into work, but,
Fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
fingers crossed on it. Yeah, good news? Alright, we'll see.
Thanks, guys.
Before I make my choices, I want to make a suggestion for the next meeting.
Yes, awesome.
Once we have identified our top choices, we then identify, to Byron's point, the other line items that nest within those top choices.
100%.
Yes.
So that it's, because yes, I think we're all struggling with the same thing, where it's like, so for me, Z21, you can throw a sticker up there, comprehensive zoning on it, but that touches on so many other of these priorities that I think are important. I'm also an I4 RSA 79E. And then while there are other ones here that other people have identified that I agree with and probably are truly higher in priority than this one, I think we should also focus on PA10, the federally subsidized unit preservation strategy from RKG, just to make certain we keep the units that we already have.
Is that 106? Yeah,
106, yep, 106.
That's on.
Also known as 24, also known as PA10.
Are those your three? Did you say three?
Those are my three, yep.
Okay. Andrew? And again, if there was one that you were really passionate about that did not make this list, we can add it.
Basically my lineup of the ones that I had mentioned before, the
SP
special population.
6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can cluster. Also the 70-90. Do not know that.
Or 4.
Or 58. I-458. Like I'm on a road.
I am quite passionate about cluster development,
Okay, it's like, am I gonna be the only one who says cluster garden?
and cottage housing.
Oh yeah, cottage cluster garden.
You might be the only one who says that, because I don't think it's the.
And I want to specify that although I firmly agree with you in terms of like the substack underneath of these, that one does not belong there because that is such a unique development pattern and use type that I don't want it to get folded in and just brushed aside. And I feel as though it commands its own column because we have a lot of land that actually could be subservient to that. So I'd like to,
Can you give me like the spark notes of what that means? Cluster development, cottage housing.
Yeah, so
I'm
it
trying to
says
think of an example.
Cluster developments are a little bit like, they're planned unit and they usually have additional land, so what's the one off of Beverly Hill Road called? Parsons Woods.
Way.
Yeah.
So that was a cluster development, believe it or not. It is actually all private
Giant
street.
subdivision.
It is, but it has 100 acres. So we only built,
Concerns all the open space,
Right.
but
Yeah.
we concentrate the development.
Oh, I see.
yes, that's why I'm trying to
Now,
like describe it, like
you
you
are
take a small
correct.
piece, you put the housing, all the rest stays
Smaller
open.
lot.
But then there's also cottage, which is like the style,
And that's
sizing.
more like the Dover, John and Maggie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Yeah, Beverly, I'm like, those are
that's why they're two truly different.
But you would
Big
like,
homes, but
you'd struggle to find somebody who understands both of those or can see actually the similarities in them, but they do exist and the concept is somewhat the same in how you
It's just
decide.
the size of the house
Yeah.
really is
What's the
different.
difference between that development at the end of Woodbury, that on the left with, I think it's manufactured homes, I mean, it's a little.
End of
Well,
Woodbury.
that's manufactured.
Oh, that's,
Oh,
the
you're
co-op?
talking about,
Is
that's
that?
a co-op,
Oh, that's a co-op, but,
that's a co-op.
but does it have any relation to cluster
No.
housing?
No.
Okay.
It's manufactured
It's a
co-op.
co-op.
Suffice to say,
They
those
don't.
are protected because that zoning will not go away, nor can it really because it is community owned. So we would have to take 100% buy it.
The little park that,
yeah, like
that's,
trailers, whatever.
Yeah, that like that they built some of the like the
That really
they-
came out
those-
nice.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
no, when the owners decided to, they went through the community development
The
loan,
HUD, yeah.
loan program, and actually the members that were, living in those units basically bought out the park and became a
Oh, that's
co-op.
fantastic. That's awesome. Yeah.
They did that a couple of years ago?
I want to say like
Kind of
4.
I think it was more like 2 or 3.
Stumbled across it, I was like surprised I had.
Yeah, and they brought in a lot of, they've been replacing some of the older units with new ones.
With
and
newer
There was a
modulars.
brand new one bedroom selling for 150,000, I
Yeah.
saw it.
And it's sold.
No, but they reversed, okay, my,
Can't get a car from it.
number 10 is Z19, development in lieu of fee option, but I just need, I want it with a caveat that it needs more detail.
Well, we make part of it is part of it. I want to make sure like we're looking for, but we're part of making the details.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
We'll
right,
get to that.
I should have said that in the beginning, Eric, when you were talking about. I feel like it needs more detail. This groups will be part of building the detail
Okay.
of the recommendations.
well, that's my opinion first.
Yes.
Z13, it was not in
Not on the
the
list.
28, it was, and that's
Manufactured.
expanded manufactured homes or modular housing zoning. Z17, allowed just subdivision of existing large houses.
Alright.
Mine were number 9 was I was really thinking about cottage style housing, and then number 5 expand multifamily zoning.
Get one more.
Number 8 lot size and dimension require updates.
Right.
Which to me I was looking at specific items that would then fall under a zoning change.
Yeah, the lot size one is really important for a couple of reasons. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the comprehensive zoning audit. I'm hoping that that's what comes out of
And
that.
that one's gonna be the biggest bucket that we throw stuff into.
Yes.
It almost feels like foolish to just say comprehensive zoning audit without specifics.
We already talked about that, right? Which is why we said that should go to the master plan so we can get more information about making those consolidations of our single-family neighborhoods.
You can always relabel it too.
Yes. I mean, we can also, too, put things, like you just said, into the bucket. So we can say, underneath 21, which is a comprehensive, here are the 8 items that we are actionable items underneath, like, this bucket.
Yeah.
Right, we definitely have some clear.
I would.
Oh.
Yes, I have mine. Now I get the colors. 21 or the 21 zoning one.
Comprehensive.
Zoning audit.
Comprehensive bucket. RSA 79E,
58 I4.
and then the
Big
develop in lieu fee option.
10C10.
And then I'd like to give honorable mention to
I was
this,
gonna say, can I honorable?
to the city housing resource portal.
Yes.
I
Absolutely.
feel like I wanna pull one of mine and give one of mine to 33.
The city housing resource portal,
Single family.
collecting all the
Different color for.
Yellow, honorable mention.
Can I piggyback off of this?
Oh, yeah, Jen
Yeah, do
gave
we
me hers.
have them? Yeah, I was gonna say, right, Jen sent them in the email. So we have Jen Stebbins couldn't be here, but Jen sent it to us.
79E and C3 residential conversion ordinance. And 1, rezone outdated districts.
Yes.
Yeah, my
Which is something we've been slowly,
I've been talking about it for 5 years.
well, we got some of it done.
I've slowly been chipping away.
I don't know if John, did John? need it?
Slowly
Yeah,
but
that's
surely. I'm ready to just do away with it now.
Not to me. Okay, so it feels like we have some goals, things we want to dive deeper into.
What are our top,
I said it
do we
looks like
have
we have
top
some
3
goals.
or is it we have
79E.
2 and then a bunch of,
It's 79E and then zoning audit.
And then
And there's a bunch of ties.
that fall, a lot of them within zoning.
That might actually fall under the zoning audit.
we have 3 with 3?
3 with 3, and 1, 2, 3 with 4 with 2.
Can we write their numbers into the comprehensive zoning audit one? Can we start to identify which ones cluster
Of
together?
the smaller ones that go inside of it.
You got 9 minutes.
So like, I think anything
let's
that
use it.
says zoning on there,
Right.
we should,
Go.
All of these.
Yeah.
So,
or zoning.
and let's see.
So just write their
No,
numbers in that little comprehensive audit so we know which ones we're talking about here.
Like Z8, Z7,
See whatever.
Z14.
Or 5, 21.
And the worst part is like, okay, it's
Then
21 Z.
Z13,
Yeah,
Z17.
10 C10. What does that? Really tricky.
Yeah, I was messing with that yesterday.
Is it GIS?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's on GitHub. It's open source.
Something I wouldn't be able to read. I'd be like, what's that say? Can you plug the number 7 in there, please? What's that one?
Say that
So
louder.
this is where I feel like some things are like redundant, because like building out the model would be the next step after comprehensive audit. So you audit, we essentially have figured out what zoning we want to change, and now we need to build out the model. Yes,
Maybe the word audit is the thing tripping us up.
yeah,
And I would say that maybe subsequent to the master plan, which is going to happen after July, it will no longer be an audit, it'll be a implementation.
yes.
So, do we wanna,
It's a zoning review, really, in the end.
well, we are doing that as part of the master plan package.
Right.
Yeah, so you're saying our list, like the way that this should word is more implementation. I can't say that word. What's that word?
I think that,
Because it's already being audited is kind of what you're saying.
Correct.
It's currently in audit. And so what do we do after the audit?
Implementation of zoning changes?
The word here, apparently.
is that
I
implementation?
think zoning
UTL.
consolidation.
UTL, our master plan consultant, is in fact going to make recommendations and improvements to our zoning ordinance.
Yes.
So I feel as though it would be redundant for us, not the consultant, like we are not those people, to do that again.
This was a question that came up vigorously when Councillor Bagley and Councillor Cook sent this to us to review. The question was, my question to them was, does it make sense for us to do this when we have paid UTL and they are gonna give us a list of review in zoning? And I was kind of shut down and they said, we want the committee to look at it, which I think is okay. I do think
Entirely.
there is the question of, are we gonna put in a bunch of work, and they have put in a bunch of work, and we're gonna come to the same.
Both can be true as
Yes.
well. I don't know how to word it better.
I don't either. So-
Well, do you think it informs where we focus our energy and attention?
So prioritizing their recommendations.
Yes.
Yes.
I would also further my point by saying I do not want to utilize RKG's consultant form-based stuff and their equations and their reports, because we've tried that.
How does
They told us
the
everything we
ordinances
knew.
actually get cracked? I mean, you take MRO or whatever it is,
Yep.
and do you have a wholesale change to it, or do you tweak like areas, or how does it
You can.
physically
When we did
happen?
when we did the ADU one and we added different ADU, I'm looking at Peter while I'm saying this, but when we added ADU elements or different types of ADUs, it was pretty wholesale. And that most of that language was from scratch. Some of it was revised and edited. And then when ADUs became by right, which was a second change to our ADU policy.
Yeah, because that was state.
Yeah, when that happened, that was more revision and legal tweaking, and Chairman Chelman did a lot of it as well.
But I guess to your point, it can be either way, because like GNOD was
GNOD was pretty wholesale.
was wholesale, like this is what we're looking at, sent it to planning board, said edit,
Yeah.
say any changes if you think, bring it back to us, we'll pass it, versus I think ADU or some of the switching from the Heritage Road and.
So my expansion of the Gateway
Yes.
District is a great example, right? We started with the Gateway Districts, just
That's
one
patchwork.
lot deep on the gateways, and then at land use, I said, no, let's go 2 lots deep. Let's really look at how we can expand it. That was getting rid of some of it, and actually, we didn't just change that. We actually took an office research lot that is a mobile home park and actually put it in the correct zoning. Because every time at Oriental Gardens, when somebody needed to do something, they're in the office research district, which was the worst district to have that in. So one of the things we tried to clean up while we were doing that was to make that actually garden apartment mobile home, so that those people can actually do what they need to do
So I
with their
think
property.
it's a bit of both, of like some of these things we have patchworked, right? Some of the things we have said, we're gonna do this, can we wiggle this a little, and then some of them, I think the bigger thing, at least what I'm hoping to come out of the master plan is full, like, this is how we can completely change this. You know, I've said it 7 times, I think we need to look at more upzoning of saying, like, we can do multipliers in different areas. And so my hope is that part of the zoning recommendations that come out of the master plan is saying this area, this area, this area that is right now single family or 2-4 units can actually hold 6 to 8, and this single family can be up to 4. So
I mean, I look at a lot of different zoning in a lot of different communities, and I hate to say this, but some of the more non-savvy communities have some of the best zoning ordinances.
I think
And written by laymen. Now, there's plenty of last minute, like, oh, let's throw this in, which screws up the whole ordinance, and because it's a town, it's a year before it can be fixed, but
I think to be
there's
honest,
a lot to be said for that.
I think there's, prior to anybody in this room's history of doing boards and X, Y, and Z, I think there's a period in time where you look at the zoning changes in Portsmouth, and I think it's because people were trying to be more restrictive. I have this book from 1976 that's called like the Community of Change, and it's literally essays from people in Portsmouth. It was done by the Humanities Council. It's amazing, and it's like, it is people saying what type of community are we going to be, and like, we're getting to be touristy now, are we taking care? And I think that part of our zoning, not done by any of our staff and stuff here, but over the time, our zoning has become heavy on legalese in some of the verbiage being confusing and being restrictive. So my dream is that we are stripping it back. Instead of this book this big, we are stripping it back, so that it can be more understood, more comprehensive, and like an easier, hey, I wanna build this is where you can do it, without a variance. With, you know, part of the thing that I know I talked to the Peters and Stephanie about is like, what are people applying for variances for that they're getting granted, and why are we not updating our ordinance to match what we're doing in practicality? And I think that's what people get frustrated at, because they'll read a news article and say, oh, well, they went to the ZBA. Well, they went to the ZBA because everywhere else in the country, or everywhere else in the state, you can do that, and it should be done that way, but our ordinance is dated from 1992 when you couldn't do that, or when they were, or 1982, and
Yeah, I mean, I have a project that's under construction that we tried to get variances, no denied, and it would have been a lot greener project, and now it's a traditional subdivision, and it makes me sad.
well, I think that's one of the things
It makes the planning board sad too.
we've talked about, is like an audit of are the variances that get approved and denied, and saying like, well, what got denied that we wish would have
That was
actually
one.
been beneficial?
Is
And then
there
we have to wrap it.
is there a public database, Peter, in terms of like an easy record, like easier list of record of all variances granted?
No.
No.
We have some old spreadsheets
Oh, that's
for the years.
You do? Are they
I
like,
don't know if I don't think they've been kept up to date, but
okay,
before we had, you know, our online portal.
But then some of them don't even matter anymore because the zoning might have changed and now it's allowed, right? So that's the harder part. You can't even track the variances because unless it's within the last
But-
20 years, it might not
okay,
even
but
be
even so,
needed.
even within the last like 10 years, like where would you go if I were to say to you, Peter, give me the list of all the variances granted in the last 10 years? Like, how would you approach that task?
Impossible.
I was like, yeah, it'd be like,
Action
I'm
In
gonna
our
try.
spreadsheet,
Panic.
up to a certain point.
Yeah.
I think you could even
Yeah.
go less, I think, because based on like the amount of permits and X, Y, and Z that we issue, you could even just go the last 5 years, but
Yeah.
you would literally have to go through action
Action
sheets.
sheets.
The
Yeah.
problem is it could have been denied in one application, and then they changed it and came back, and then it was,
And your exercise is very effective, but I think the outcome has to be changed, or the intention has to be changed. It's not so much the granted or denied, but which ones could have been like an administrative approval, or
Yes.
could have been streamlined,
or benefit to,
Well, that's the side of the coin, right?
Yeah.
To get the data first, and then
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to ask the more productive question where you can say, how can we improve that process rather than the language around it?
which I think some of it has been done with streamlining some things from administrative approval, X, Y, and Z. I think it really kind of took over when we were doing that with ADUs before the the state right. Okay,
So,
Yes.
you know, before, last year we met the second Thursday, which didn't conflict with the planning board. I think this meeting was kind of special, so if everyone's okay with going back to the second Thursday.
does everyone feel, so that would be June 11th?
The second Thursday?
That's what we used to.
okay.
And
That works here.
is it that moving forward?
Yeah,
It
the
would be,
committee.
yes. Okay. No pitchforks from the crowd?
Comment, I don't think.
Okay, yeah, we will open public comment. We'll see if there's nobody online.
5 p.m. or 5:30?
5:30. Okay,
What would make that,
Yes.
I don't have a count. What would make
June
it-
11th.
June 11th?
Yes,
Okay,
I almost was like,
thank
no,
you.
it's not June. It is June. Okay, well, we will adjourn. Thank you guys so much. We'll wait for this condensed list.